And good morning, everyone. Today is the 14th of May, 2019. I'm Roy Potter. Welcome to the Potter Expositor. A couple of things, not really administrative, but some things I think I need to mention. It's some time ago I mentioned that I really don't want to get involved in dissertations, threads, short ones for different things when we have something going on Twitter. But to get into long discussions, even about current affairs, there are so many issues involved, so many points of view, that it's really hard to cover it all in any reasonable length of time, even here. Even in a situation where you're in a conference hall and you're having different speakers or things like that, you never can cover everything in those forums, but on Twitter, it's dang near impossible. You have these different points of view, and to try to address each one as you go back and forth, almost like a debate, it's just really too hard. On today's issues, when we're talking about historical issues and issues of faith, it gets out of control. And so again, for those of you, it's not like I consider any of you an enemy or anything like that want to banter on these things. But as I said before, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to go back and forth on those issues because the depth and breadth of it is just too much. I've studied these things for a long time, as I've talked about, and the only reason why I bring them up here, I'm not trying to convince you of anything. I'm trying to give you food for thought. And that's all. And if that's not sufficient for you to go out and determine for yourself, whether, what I say has any merit or not, that's up to you. So don't take offense to the fact that, like I've said several times now, that I'm not going to address those issues on Twitter to any great depth. Having the ability to search those things out to your own satisfaction is all that I'm asking, because it's still in many matters, especially even historical matters that have happened centuries ago, it's very much a matter of take and opinion, and frankly they're not worth arguing about. So take what I say with a grain of salt. That's fine with me, but I would hope that you at least go take a look at these things that I've been talking about over the last 4 or 5 years that have to do with history and religion and spirituality and things like that. Just study it out on your own. Come to your own conclusions. Okay? All right. My faith isn't dependent upon your accepting what I say. Okay? It just isn't. And I would hope that that's the case for you too. All right, little introduction there. I wanted to jump over into the situation on the border. There are more people, citizens, I don't like to call them citizens, Americans, let's call them that, going to the border, both armed and unarmed, frankly, to be around the drug cartels and the terrorists that are coming in and those types of things. I think it'd be foolish to go down on the border without being armed. I certainly was when I was down there. I didn't take it over into Mexico, but I think you get my idea, right? Some months ago, I said that it wasn't wise to interfere with the military building up down there, let them do it. But obviously it was because at that point I thought that maybe the military was being deployed in much larger numbers than as it's turned out. Unfortunately, as most of you know, our military deployment down there turned into transportation, mess halls, etc., which is not what should have happened, but that's the way that went. So the other side of the coin, however, is that really, and you've got to consider this before you go down there if you decide that you want to do that. You're talking about people carrying around equipment that is lethal. I'm not saying that you shouldn't be able to protect yourself, but what happens if you do get into an altercation? That's number one. Number two is, as I pointed out before, what are the resources that you have at your disposal to do anything more than what the Border Patrol, which is already it's overwhelmed now. What are you going to do? You're not actually providing any resources other than eyes and ears. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying that without having the proper facilities and that, I'm not certain that it's going to help. And that's by design on the part of the feds, by the way. I remember when I was down there, they were very taken aback that I would be concerned about the border. They were accusing me of a border militia member and all that, which I was not. And actually, it wasn't the Border Patrol that did that. It was a forest ranger. I guess he was really impressed with his badge and his gun. But anyway, it really is up to the American people to secure their liberties and their rights and their land, and I understand that. But we also have a government that's not friendly to us, not even right now. What should happen, and this is why I said that the best method for this is for Donald Trump to use Article 2, Section 2, and to actually call in a militia organization. I notice that Lionel's talking about this more and more. He's not talking about Trump doing it. He's talking about the rights of Americans to protect their interests, and I agree with that. The problem is that when you go and exercise your rights like that, what happens? We've already seen it. The feds, particularly the FBI, come in there and they blow something out of proportion. They plant evidence. They entrap people because they don't want us exercising our rights. Now, I'm not saying not to do that. I'm just saying be aware that there are forces in our government, even now, that will do anything that they can to keep you from exercising your rights, number one, and entrapping you in order to keep their power. And we've seen that with this whole thing with President Trump. And I've named other instances not to do with the Russian collusion investigation and all that has happened. And it's disgusting. It absolutely is disgusting. But it became an issue of numbers and results to them is a conviction whether the person is innocent or not. And we see that in the Bulger case with Mueller, where FBI informants committed the murder and he set up 4 innocent men. That's not something that happens infrequently, I hate to tell you. And again, Sean Hannity last night talking about 99.9% of the rank and file of the FBI just isn't true. Who pulled the trigger on Zarnov's friend during an interrogation in Florida? That should never happen in an interrogation. That was planned out that way, or it was managed so that it would end up that way. And again, the Bulger case, and again, Waco, and again, Ruby Ridge, and again, Bundy Ranch. I mean, I could just go on, and there are others, not just those big cases. That's how they operate now. I have members of my family who are in the FBI. They're agents, or were. Several that have retired. Some have passed away. But I'm very familiar with it. And those guys, I've not actually talked about it with most of them. Only one, and. He was pretty upfront with me about the situation. And this was many years ago, which shows that the problem was around even then. but it's true. They're not all bad. But the problem is that where are they standing up and pointing to these problems? And of course, I realize that there's an internal control mechanism in these federal agencies where you become a whistleblower, whether legally or not. And there are other ways other than arresting you and all those things to cause you trouble. And Congress has not addressed those. Maybe, and probably for their own benefit more than anything else. But I realize that when people stand up, that there is a backlash, and there are other things that happen. Disciplinary actions that are outside judicial processes, certainly things to make life harder on you, and I know that. I've been there. I'm not asking these agents to do anything that I haven't already done. Okay? Leadership is important when you don't ask someone to do something that you wouldn't do yourself. And I'm telling you, I have done those things. I have stood up when nobody else would in many situations. And yeah, I did pay a price for it. But I sleep better at night. And hopefully at some point in time it protected the innocent. Anyway, I just wanted to bring that up. I'm not saying not to get involved in the border thing. Just be aware that it's not going to be as easy as you think. Eyes and ears are great. Reporting is great. See and report, that's fine. But if you get into a serious altercation, I guarantee you that this damned federal bureaucracy is not going to be your friend. Okay, just be aware of that. No coffee this morning. Not that I don't have some. It's a little dry right now as the spring comes in and the rains stop. The air gets very dry and my throat starts to dry out. So coffee's not a good idea right now. Okay, so I covered the border militia thing. I also wanted to bring up another thing, and I'm going to say it at the beginning here because I think it has merit, and even though it's kind of spiritual in nature, one of the things that has disgusted me a long time about certain aspects of religions is they denigrate our existence. They say that we're fallen beings. I'm not saying we aren't. But it gets to the point where you're looked upon. You're told that you need to look upon yourself as this decrepit creature. And don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying that when you go into prayer with God that you don't, go in there as in a sense of awe towards God, and humble in your own circumstances and knowing that you're faulty. But there's this idea that God demands. A lot of people preach that God demands that we, hold him up above everything else. Now, again, don't misunderstand me here. I agree with that to this extent that we're in awe of the creation and what God has given to us. But think about this, and this is why I'm going here. God didn't give us all of these blessings to constantly be, as many people think, on a cloud strumming a harp, giving him praises 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. That's a thing in your heart. He wants you to experience. He wants you to get out there and get your boots dirty. And if you look at it from a parental point of view, there's a time and place where you want the children to grow up and get a certain amount of experience, education, protection, and all that. But when they reach a certain age, and it varies from person to person, what happens? Either the child wants to leave and go out and try their wings on their own, or the parents kick them out. And it's for their own good. It's to get them out there and to experience outside the protections of the home. In other words, to try their wings, like I've just said. I don't want to get into all the doctrinal stuff on this or, the stars in heaven shouting for joy in Isaiah and all that, but I just want to say that he's placed you outside of his house in whatever way you think he has, because you're so decrepit or you're a fallen angel. A lot of people think we're all the fallen angels, and no, that's not true either. But whatever you want to take it to be that God wants you here to experience this stuff. It's not all bad. You get bad and good, and he wants you to have that experience outside of his house, to grow up, to get some experience. I had one very good sage tell me once, he says, you know, Roy, you're going to be left to your own devices. Okay? And then from there, it's what we pick and choose as far as good and evil, etc. But I just wanted to, if that makes sense this morning, what I'm saying is don't decry, don't say how God is punishing you by having you here, that you're not worthwhile. You may not be perfect, and yes, we are as dross compared to God, but this is a growing process, and I just want to make sure that you know that you're here. God kicked you out of his house, or you chose to leave, whichever it was, so that you could try your wings. Okay? All right, over to Dan Bongino. If you've been watching Dan Bongino, Lee Stranahan also, I like to mention them together because they're kind of at odds with each other over this Ukraine situation, and Bill Browder. And I question why that's happening, and I'm not going to point any fingers, but I do believe that Lee Stranahan has produced the evidence to show that Bill Browder is a problem, and that our MIC and Deep State is using him to justify their actions, much like they used and I forget the Iraqi's name who said that that told Bush and the government back just prior to the Iraq War, before it started, that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction. He lied. But they wanted to believe him. They wanted to believe him, even though he produced no evidence. And that's kind of where we are today with many things. And Bill Browder is the guy they choose to believe, even though he's a criminal. And I'll just say that out front. It's very obvious. Lee Stranahan put up a deposition on Twitter yesterday. I'd like to put it here, but just go look at his Twitter account if you have it, or his Periscope, and you'll see it's a deposition of the Department of Homeland Security about this whole thing with the Magnitsky Act and Bill Browder, and it's pretty plain to see what's going on there. It was a cover-up to protect Browder and what's going on there. So just go take a look at it, because I don't know that Dan Bongino knows all of that, or if he does, he has chosen to not address it because maybe it takes, in his mind, takes the sights off the real problem. I'm not really sure, but at any rate, I just wanted to mention Lee again because I have so much respect for him, and I have respect for Dan too. Dan Bongino and I have both been, he was a New York City police officer, Secret Service. I was a city police officer and military police, and operated some military intelligence circles as well, as most of you know. And so we have some similar backgrounds in that. And so anyway, so Dan had this show yesterday, his episode, and he called it "It's Over." And I don't know if you all watch that. You really need to, because, as I often say, what is the motto of my channel? The intelligence community is our most dangerous domestic enemy, and I did a whole series on FBI corruption, which I've had both personally and professionally. I know that inside and out, and I've been complaining about it for many years. Saw where it was going, and all of that. So Dan Bongino, of course, he basically focuses in on the FBI senior leadership, and that's okay for what he's doing. But that's what basically this was. It was a very, very insightful show, and I'd like you to go see it. And the bottom line is that this letter, these notes, these handwritten notes that were written by the Department of State official Ms. Kavalek, during her meeting with Christopher Steele, who, of course, is behind the Steele dossier, the Russian dossier, as well as so is Fusion GPS. This whole thing is intertwined, and it's all coming apart now. The bottom line of this program yesterday that Dan said is that this letter that Ray tried to classify it and redact information to show that even the Department of State knew that Cohen didn't go to Prague. That's Trump's attorney. That was false, and also that as Steele was trying to claim that the Russians were operating out of a Miami consulate. There is no Miami consulate. So he was showing all these things that the FBI either failed to investigate or they didn't want to look at it anyway because it didn't matter. They were going to do this coup regardless. And that's kind of how I would look at it. I don't think it was an oversight. I think they deliberately ignored it because they wanted to go forward with the coup, and they did everything they could to suppress any information. Does that surprise anybody? The FBI, when you're an investigator and you find exculpatory information, basically what you do is you use enforcement discretion. You say, I have no probable cause here. This is exculpatory. I'm not going to take up the court's time filing this, or I'll take it to the DA, or in their case, the FBI, the U.S. attorney, or whatever, and talk about it. But the exculpatory evidence resolves the whole thing, and yet they want to push it because of how corrupt our law enforcement, especially our federal law enforcement, has become. So at any rate, they did all of these things, and basically Director Wray hid this note. The FBI's hid it, these notes taken by Cadillac. They typed up the handwritten notes and then redacted, classified it here just about a month ago. And it's been about 3 weeks. Isn't that strange? That they hid this from the House and Senate investigations. I don't know if they hid it from the IG as well. I think Dan was pointing out that they did. This is obstruction of justice by the institution itself, as most of you understand. So, as it turns out, there were some handwritten notes that Ray and others apparently realized were out there, and that were not classified, and they tried to get their hands on it to stop it, but it got out. And I'm sure they're furious about that. Whoever was probably an agent, I would suspect. It could be one of the House members or Senate members that are good guys. I don't know. But basically what this shows is that they knew prior to the first FISA, and I'm not saying FISA is the whole nuts and bolts of this thing right now. A lot of people are looking at, these FISA court applications and orders were wrong, and that's true, they were, but that's not the only way that Strzok did this. There were also national security letters and some other things that were done, and I hope that we don't lose sight that this was a multi-pronged attack. There really were. It wasn't just an insurance policy. There were several of them. And Strzok, as I pointed out, was the key man outside of Comey in the FBI that Brennan was able to control because Strzok is part CIA. And I mentioned that the other day. And he's still operating for them. Hopefully he goes down and all these guys go down. It really has to happen. Everybody's calling for these people to be arrested, tried, and if convicted, sentenced to either life imprisonment or hung. And I agree with all of that. But it sure is moving slowly, and we're going to talk about that again here in a minute. So again, back to Dan Bongino. Basically, he was telling the FBI, "You're caught. This shows that you were hiding evidence, obstructing justice, that you lied on the FISA applications and to the FISA court. It's over, guys. Your whole operation is blown. You screwed up." And I'm going to add to this. These are the guys that we trust with the security of our country. Really? These idiots, and even Bongino calls them that, these idiots are the people that we trust to secure our country. No wonder we're so screwed up. And the same thing goes for the IC for getting us into these wars overseas, lying about what the real evidence is, like the weapons of mass destruction for Iraq. They lie to get us into these things because, well, it's partially the politicians, of course. They want to see things that justify their policies. It's not if it ever was, but it certainly isn't any longer where they use information, right, to form policy. No, they form a policy and then demand that the intelligence agencies give them whatever to justify that. And I see even Trump doing that, and it disturbs me. This whole thing with Venezuela and, of course, with Iran. But that's not going to be the subject matter today. Okay, I'm not going to go there. So anyway, go see Dan Bongino's program. It's over. And I asked this on here. I said, is it over? And, as far as proving that the FBI had premeditated evil, I don't know what else to call it, crime, a criminal intent, a premeditated criminal intent to interfere with the election, interfere with our constitutional republic, lie, plant evidence, all of that. Yes, I think that it's finally come out, and it needs to come out even more. In that regard, maybe it's over, but I just want to say also that the deep state and the coup isn't going to just roll over because they get found out. And I think you all know that this still has all of the ingredients to turn into an internal shooting war in the government. And I'm not saying that they won't do that, resort to assassination, whatever. We're still very much, as Senator Graham said, and I called one of my live streams this the other day, we're in the most dangerous time in American history. That's pretty impressive to say that, but that's exactly how it is. There are two big forces at work here. Comey talked about a higher loyalty, right? A higher loyalty to what? That should be the question. A higher loyalty above the Constitution, above the will of the American people, above the rule of law. They throw the rule of law statement around and they define it in so many different crazy ways. It's ridiculous, and it's in every way that goes to them being the dictators, to determine what that rule of law is, rather than the laws themselves. Okay. So please go look at Dan Bongino. He does a much better job than I just did. And like I say, I don't want to run this along too long. Let's make sure. I think the chat's on and everything's up and running. Yeah, it looks pretty good. Okay. Just wanted to make sure. All right. I don't need to repeat a whole lot of information that we found out yesterday, that Barr has assigned the Connecticut U.S. Attorney John Durham to investigating the origins of the Russian investigation and that aspect of the coup. Just to remind you that the Russian part of the coup is only one aspect, okay? There are some others. But at any rate, he has been charged with doing that. And I'm a little disappointed in some respects, although I never really expected Barr to do the investigation himself. He's like the commander. He's literally a general. He's the attorney general. He can't get down into the weeds on all these little small things. He really needs to delegate these things out. But I am a little concerned. I hope that they get the information from Judicial Watch, from American intelligence media, these people that have been out there really digging this stuff up and using it. They still need to verify it, true, but it shouldn't be that difficult or take that long. As The Last Refuge said in a tweet yesterday, he's on Twitter. I've quoted him before. He says he hopes that this isn't another excuse for years-long investigations. And there shouldn't be years-long investigations. This thing could be wrapped up in literally a couple of months. So there's no reason for this thing not to happen relatively fast. And I do hope that it's not just to drag it on for a long time. I don't think so. I don't think that's Barr's intent at this point. He does want to protect the institution of the DOJ and the FBI. I've already said that. So there are going to be some exceptions in what they move forward with. But I do think that John Durham should be able to wrap this thing up really fast. And apparently he's already been involved with it to some extent. I got a tweet the other day. Thanks for sending this to me, the person that did it. that he was involved in some part of this back in October of 2018, just 6 months ago. Why that would be the case then, I'm not really sure, but apparently he was. So, at any rate, this thing should move forward relatively quickly if Barr and Durham are serious. Given the amount of information and evidence that's already amassed, this should not be a big deal. But we'll see. We'll see how they manage it. The other side of that is Huber, John Huber, because I even hear Sean Hannity still saying, there's a Huber investigation on the leaks. Well, it's like I told you, I got some inside information about, right after Barr came in, and I told you that he asked, we heard that he actually asked Huber for his work product. I have a sneaky suspicion that if Huber had done his work as everybody thought he had, which he hadn't, if he had, this appointment of John Durham would probably not have happened. So I suspect that Barr gave Huber some time to put together what he had, and what he presented to Barr was probably insufficient, inefficient, and obviously not up to the standards of a U.S. Attorney's office in something like this. I'm not saying that he isn't contributing now, that Barr hasn't gotten on his butt like I told you, got the whip moving and say, Huber, you get me some work product and get it now. But I have a sneaking suspicion that what Huber's done it did not please Barr at all. And I told you that was going to happen with Huber. Nothing against Huber, it was the way the thing was set up. It's who he answers to, both in the SES and the deep state, and also to his, and I'm just going to say it, to his Mormon friends in Utah and their complicit behavior in some of the things that have happened with our government. I'll just leave it at that. Okay, and then I think I'll end on this, and then we'll get to chatting for a few minutes. There was another piece of information that was sent to me the other day, and there's no way for me to vet this. I don't even know if the document is official, but I think it looks like basically how it addresses the issue and what's happened. I think it's true. What this document said was it was a letter or an email that a person in Stratfor, if you don't know what Stratfor is, it's basically an organization that assists the CIA. Okay, I'll just put it that way. And there are many of those, but that's one of the big ones. And Stratfor basically said that what they needed to do to go after Julian Assange was to get him accused in as many countries as possible, to get his family attacked, get his resources taken, make sure that there are multiple jurisdictions that accuse him of crime so that they can tie him up forever. In other words, totally destroy Julian Assange, his family, and his compadres, the people, his partners in what he has been doing the last few years. This is typical. This is what it's about. It's about those in power misusing their power to hide their own crimes. Basically what they say is the government shouldn't be held to accountability, and we're going to go after anybody that tries to do that. And poor Julian Assange is going to be receiving the brunt of that. I'm ashamed that Donald Trump gave up on him this easy. I'm not certain that exactly what's going on in Trump's mind there, but it is disturbing based on all of the information that we've received, based upon Trump's understanding, or what he should understand, about our military-industrial complex and the intelligence community, what they have done to him, what the intelligence community has done to Trump in and of itself, all by itself, should tell Trump that there's something wrong with what's going on with the proceedings against Julian Assange. So I'm just here to give my voice to that, and we need to condemn what's happening to Julian Assange. prosecutors are, and the intelligence community and the military-industrial complex pushing this, show what we as Americans are up against with this Leviathan that supposedly is there to protect us, and it isn't. It's there to put us down. It's there to make sure that we don't rise up. It's like in the movie Ants, right? If we let these ants rise up, there'll be no end to it. And that's what they're trying to stop. So, I get real interested. I saw Mueller, going into the church. Remember, they showed him and he and his wife going into the church, and they're going to worship and all that. You know what? I find that hypocritical to such an extent. We all know what Mueller has done from the Bulger case to 9/11 to the yellow cake to Russia to what he's done on this entire Russian probe, etc. How evil he really is, and yet I'm sure that when he goes into church and he hears the priest or the preacher or the reverend or whoever it is he listens to, and they talk about how horrible the prophets were treated back in the days of Israelite history, and even at the time of Jesus, like John the Baptist and Jesus himself, how horrible the prophets were treated. And every generation extols the dead prophets, but the prophets that are brought to them to call them to repentance, in their time, they reject. And they persecute, and they prosecute. Assange may not be a messenger from God like the prophets were labeled in the Old Testament and even in the New, maybe. And there will be people that say, there are no more prophets. Spirit of Christ is the spirit of prophecy, so that right there negates any saying that there are no prophets today. But despite that, any truth teller has the Spirit of Christ in them, and Julian Assange is one of those, and he's being persecuted for telling the truth. And he's not the only one, of course, but he's definitely receiving a great deal of injustice at this point. And I'm ashamed that Donald Trump allowed this to happen. He could have stopped it. I guess he still could. He might wait until they extradite Julian and bring him here. Okay. The downside to that, Julian could die. They could kill him because I'm talking about the Brit. The Brits are in on this too, right? They could kill him, or he could die of a broken heart. He could die of a broken heart. He's been alone, no human contact for so long. I do not worship the United States government, nor the British government, nor any other. I want to hold them to accountability, and they've stepped way out of bounds. If I could, I would go and get Julian out of prison myself. Rhetoric isn't meeting what's on the ground in many circumstances. Okay. To end on that, I'll just say Trump is apparently moving forward, wanting to clean up this mess in the intelligence community that has committed this coup against him, and more importantly, against the American people. And I get a kick out of how people like Pelosi and Maxine Waters and all these people talk about Kamala Harris. Oh, the American people want to know. We have to answer the American, but they don't give a rat's ass about the American people. And the lies that they spew out with impunity just show how evil they are. It just shows how evil they are. And of course, Kamala Harris and several others said that if she makes it the president, she's gonna have an executive order, a national emergency, banning all types of weapons, repealing the Second Amendment. Well, lady, what kind of attorney were you? Because the national emergencies, et cetera, that Trump has done were in line with the Constitution. They didn't violate the Constitution. You're saying that you're going to issue an order that violates the Bill of Rights? I think it's a little different situation, Madame. You sell yourself for You're worse than a whore. Okay, let's look at the chat. And I'm not going to go on long today. I'm a little under the weather, actually. Been up a lot late. And like a lot of you, a lot of this does get to me. It does get to you. It wears you down after a while. And that's planned. It's meant to be that way. That's part of the warfare. Remember, the beast made war with the saints. Wore out the saints of the Most High. Wore them out. Okay. Okay, Peep. Iran has repeatedly stated that they want the USA to go down. Get over yourself. Hold on. And that they want Israel to go down. True. These are the mullahs and the Khomeinis and those people there. It's really not the people in Iran. There are other ways to resolve this, and I've already told you, Peep. I've already told you what the answer is to this thing diplomatically, and yes, it would work. But you don't understand that the military-industrial complex puts you and the world in these situations so that you look at it just the way you are right there. And I don't mean to insult you, but I think that they could probably convince you to kill your mother based upon, this information that they continuously pump out into the world. There's a way to resolve the Iran problem. I've told you what it is. If you don't remember, go back and look. Yeah, Jack Kennedy, thank you for bringing it up. This exactly proves my point. If you remember, General Wesley Clark said that he got information about, and it was on the television about a Peep. You might want to listen to this. Who said that he got information while he was at the Pentagon that the United States was going to go to war with these different countries in the Middle East. Do you remember that, Peep? Yeah, I'm insulting you because I get tired of this. Okay. General Wesley Clark said that. And he asked the person that gave him this information, well, why are we going to war? And the guy says, well, this is just the plan, right? Well, it's all about getting to Russia is really what the end result is. So the CIA works these things and does all these little magic tricks to get these regimes into power. Look what they did to Gaddafi. Look what they did to Saddam Hussein. Yeah, those are bad guys, but, the CIA put them there so that they'd have perpetual warfare down the road. We keep falling for it, Peep. We keep falling for it. So Jack Kennedy here says, the 5 Middle Eastern nations on the PNAC, and if you don't know what that is, Peep, you might want to go look, the Project for a New American Century, which is a neocon hit list, just as Jack Kennedy says here, before they get to Russia. Iran is the linchpin. How long have I been saying that, Peep? These people lie to us. I'm not saying that the mullahs are good or the Khomeinis are good. But why are they there in the first place? You need to look into Washington, D.C., New York City, and London, Peep. End of the Reds 5. You people need to quit worrying about God and start worrying about your children's survival. Well, I can't disagree with you there, but in reality, those are one and the same, are they not? So I won't take issue with you. I look at the principles that come from God, the attributes of God, to help us to do what you're saying there. And so that's why I talk about it. Anyway. How do you get politics out of the rule of law, Tommy? 3-step? That's a good question. I don't know that you can do it completely, but I've said several times that politicians, if they advocate any infringement on the Bill of Rights, that should be an arrestable offense. The Constitution binds them, but there's no statute that punishes them for violating it. That's the problem. it goes to their oath of office, getting tossed out on an election. No, there needs to be a statute, and they'll never pass one. We're way too far down the road for that. I'm sorry to tell you, Tommy Three Step, but because they won't incriminate themselves. But in fact, it should be that if they advocate any infringement on the Bill of Rights, that should be cause for them to be arrested for attempting to overthrow the government of the United States. Yeah, Vietcong fire, you're right. All this stuff was planned back in the 1800s. I've told everybody about that. He says about Albert Pike planning World War I and II and more. Yeah, that's all true. And I brought it up as to that stuff was explained to us by several writers in the 1800s who told us about these things. They were trying to tell us and warn us, but they got killed anyway for revealing the plans. And there wasn't just one. This happened to several people. Yeah, 7, I believe that. 777. It's not, why would you do that? Why would you call yourself 777? Okay, well, that's all right. Maybe you're looking at it from the point of view of a casino. We win. I don't know. That's not how I look at it, but that's okay. You say it's not over till there are hangings. Well, at least that there are convictions, arrests and convictions. And like I say, this thing with John Durham, it could be a good thing, and I think it is. I'm hearing a lot of good information. He went after the CIA and some other IC corruption. So he's done it before, so I think he's up to the task. It's just we can't drag this thing on for very long. It can't. This has to be swift. I don't expect miracles like next week, but it can't go for years either. Right? Yeah, Hal, I agree. We're leaving our borders unprotected. We're heading to fight someone else's war. They do it to us every time, and I thought Trump was smart enough to prevent that. Maybe he will be. I mean, we're not really committed yet. We've got these forces in place in the Persian Gulf and in that region as a warning, which isn't necessarily a bad move. But yes, one of the plans. See, this is the point. I'm glad that these two last comments are really important because this was part of the idea. In the 1800s, they said what they'll do is they'll get us involved in foreign wars, deplete our resources, deplete our money, deplete everything, get our troops out of the country in these foreign wars, and then we can't protect our homeland. And that's exactly, they were talking about that in the 1800s. And here we're seeing it. And we're falling right in line with it. I'd like to have 5 minutes with Trump. 5 minutes. Like I told you, he apparently looked at some of my videos here a year ago and sent me a letter thanking me for my suggestions and that. But he I don't know. I don't want to insult anybody today. I'm just hoping that Trump does the right thing. But I'm not certain. I mean, he fell for it with Bolton in Venezuela and even admitted it. Bolton needs to go. And I'd like to throw Pompeo out of there too. Okay, let's see here. Mike Sully says Islam, not Muslims, will eventually dominate the entire globe. I know what you're saying there, that's been the push. It's been the push. First of all, the 1800s writers like Albert Pike talked about causing a war between Islam and Christianity, et cetera, et cetera. But the basic foundations of I want to be careful how I say this today. I don't want to get in a big fight. But the basic foundations of Islam are Satan's side of the war in heaven. And that's really the end. It's really what China is doing. China hates Islam. They put Muslims in prison. They kill them by the hundreds and maybe thousands. We've heard about that. If you haven't heard about it, they are doing that. They're putting them in these concentration camps, these re-education camps, and then killing them in mass. And I know that that's happening. They're being persecuted. I know that. But China also knows, unfortunately, that if you let those people get a hold, they will take over. And they'll do the same thing the Chinese are doing, but you see the Chinese imperialists, the Chinese leaders, they want to be the ones doing that. They don't want it done to them. That's all that is. So Islam is being used by the New World Order to do this. And then it'll be the basis for the New World Order religion. Now, Sixth Eye says, Mifsud, Maltese Jew with connections to Russian Jewish oligarchs, Papadopoulos and wife Israeli assets, no Russian collusion, but plenty of Israel collusion. Wait and see. Roy is wrong. I'm not wrong. Not at all. Jeez. Look, the point of this whole thing is that there was no Russian collusion. That's the point of all this. Was there Israeli collusion? Well, yeah, probably. I think we could say that. Was there Saudi Arabian collusion? Sixth Eye? Yeah. Was there Ukrainian collusion? Yeah. Hey, guess what? That's not all Jewish. Sixth Eye. No, I'm right. Go listen to Lee Stranahan. He'll set you straight. Okay? I'm not saying there aren't bad forces in Israel. I've talked about that a long time ago. I've talked about how Israel and Saudi Arabia are just two sides of the same coin, a Mutt and Jeff routine. But then Ukraine adds a whole other aspect to this. As do, hey, Sixth Eye, what about the Five Eyes? What about the British Crown and MI6? Huh? So you're honing in on just a very small aspect of what's happening here. No, I'm not wrong. I've been at this a long time. You're looking at it from way too simple of an argument. Way too simple. Yeah, David Payson, maybe the FBI director, Ray, would like to join Comey in the unemployment line. It should happen today. I'm not saying I have insight or anything. I'm saying Trump should fire Ray today. Absolutely, 100% should fire him today. But by keeping him there, guess what? He's subject to laws inside the federal government where he can't, in other words, he's subject to certain IG restrictions and investigations as well from the Department of Justice. So maybe it's best to keep him there and interrogate him under lights while he's still a government employee. But I'd like to see him get fired. Oh. Yeah, good point, tinfoil hat. Yeah, Senate hearings on 5G today, and Fox just ran a story about 5G and said that Russian trolls are warning against 5G because of health concerns. Yeah, they want to blame everything on the Russians. Oh, don't you remember, tinfoil hat? We're Russians because we wanted to vote for Trump, because we don't want to trust the IC. We're Russians. We helped to steal an election from Hillary. We're Russian agents. Yeah, Fox doing that is disgusting. It is. Yeah. Okay. Let's go down here. We've been going for 53 minutes, and really I don't want to go very long today. I like some of your comments here. Reshaping our world, I like yours. I'm not going to spend time on it, but because then we'll get into these long, serious discussions that I just don't want to go there today. Yeah, and every case you're referencing is this is Prachi Scorch, Robert Mueller at the helm. Yeah, I agree. He's not. Do you remember? Think about James Clapper and John Brennan. What we know about them now. Remember when they were talking about Mueller? Oh, Bob Mueller, he's great. He's the very best there is. He's top notch. He's superb. He's the greatest thing since sliced bread. Just them saying that, I knew that Bob Mueller was a problem. I didn't have to even know about his background. As soon as I saw the testimonies on him, the strokings by Brennan and Clapper, I knew he was a bad guy. I knew it. I didn't need to even go any further. Wow. So okay, well, whatever. Jack Kennedy. Hanging him would be a stroke. STROZK, a play on the name. Stroke of good luck. It's pretty funny. I like that. Okay. Uh, a Viet Cong fire. I'm not sure Trump is a shill for the Zionists. I've already explained his partnering with the Israelis, very similar to David in the Old Testament, making a partnership with the Philistines. Yes, he has members of look. Pompeo's wrong. Anti-Zionism is not anti-Semitism. That's totally bullshit. Totally bullshit. So I'm not defending Zionism here or even what Israel does. Okay, I'm not doing that. I'm merely saying that Israel has a right to exist as a nation. That's all I'm saying. I think Trump has some leanings to. It's pretty obvious he has some leanings. I mean, his daughter is Jewish. His son-in-law is, and he probably has some others in his family that are as well. That doesn't cause me a problem. What I worry about is that we shouldn't answer to any other nation, be it the Queen of England, be it Netanyahu, be it Xing. It doesn't matter. I get disturbed when I see the United States tied in an unbreakable bond with Israel because of our viewpoints that are pushed by the Christian community, because it's not the Israel of God. It just isn't. It might be a good, and I'm not certain that it is. It might be a good ally in the Middle East. Frankly, I don't like it. I mean, you've got the situation with the Liberty incident back during the '67 war. You've got Israeli spies that have been arrested in the United States. You have 9/11. But I also realize that there are rogue elements of the Israeli government, just like there are rogue elements of the U.S. government that we've been seeing, play out for the last 2.5 years. I've seen it before that. So I don't want to come totally against Israel in any way, shape, or form. But by the same token, I don't like Trump tying us in a marriage bond with Israel. I don't like that. I think that's a big mistake. As you all know, I do not believe that anybody that holds office in the United States, an elected office, a bureaucratic office, a law enforcement office, an intelligence office, should have dual citizenship in any other country. They're either American citizens and that's it. They're either Americans or they're not. If they want to take up, there should be no dual citizenship. And I include Israel in that. There should be nobody in this country holding office of any kind where they have dual citizenship with another country, and that includes Israel. Okay. 5855. I'm going to run down to the bottom of the list here. Yeah, protect Julian Assange. I agree. That should be number one. Oh, wow. Oh, good comment. MWNGW. If there are no indictments and prosecutions against this deep state, it is like a lesbian returning to its vomit. Yeah. Colonel Kwiatkowski said psychotropic drugs are being used on Assange to chemically lobotomize him. Yeah, I don't doubt that. They do it to our own people, too. Let's see here. I saw something I wanted to address real quick. This thing jumps so fast. Oh, I see. Luisa Chavez is having a discussion with somebody else, and I guess it's there's not an agreement there. Well, that's what the chat's for. I'll let you guys duke that one out. I'll say this one more and then I'm going to go, because now it's gotten into discussion with Jews and Israel and all that again. Look, I have a very good understanding of the history of the Middle East, and especially in the first century where all this was set in motion. Actually, you could say it happened long before that. But I will say it again, okay? Israel and Saudi Arabia are really one and the same. They're run by the same people, and that the whole situation with Herod in the first century, being an Edomite Arab, confused the issue of who is a Jew and who isn't, who is Israelite and who isn't, but particularly who is a Judaite and who isn't. And I wrote a book about it, and I'll just leave it at that. But yeah, that's one issue as far as our understanding of prophecy, etc., and how Christians view Israel. That's one problem. And I think that's an incorrect viewpoint. We should look at Israel as nothing more than just another sovereign nation. It may have a right to exist, but it's not some manifestation of God's will on earth. I don't believe that. And neither do many Orthodox Jews. And I'm not Jewish. Somebody asked me the other day, are you Jewish? No. I consider myself an ancient restored Israelite. In other words, another definition of that would be a Jamesian Christian. Now, Paul said, well, some say they're of Cephas and some of Paul and some of Apollo, whatever. Yeah, there's a problem with that. We should all just be of Jesus Christ, of the mindset of that, of the perfect law of liberty. But people don't understand that, or they don't want to go there. So, are you a Christian, Roy? Yes. Are you a Jew? No. I am a restored Israelite, which Jesus was about, restoring the truth, okay, the great restorer. And his brother, James, was the epitome of that. So I'm a Jamesian Christian by definition, I think. Okay. I think we've gone on long enough here. I would like to spend a lot more time, but I do want you to keep up on other commentators, because there are a lot of good ones out there. Again, Headlines with a Voice, Dan Bongino, Lee Stranahan, the Still Report, and I could go on and on. And yes, I'm going to give another plug for Alex Jones, despite how he irritates me at times. I've got to give him respect for being out there and slugging it out. I'm not going to be critical of him. I appreciate what he's done, and what he has gone through and what his people have gone through. Because they want to get the truth out there. And the persecution that's going on against them isn't just a show. It's for real. So go listen to Alex again today. Alex really falls in, the ancient prophets were considered crazy men. Just like Stalin accused people who didn't want, or who were critical of Stalinist Russia, of the communists, of, anybody that criticized Stalin or the communist regime, they were labeled insane. And some people get so involved emotionally that, yes, they start doing, Alex could really get on one, and I agree. I've never seen Julian Assange do that, of course. He's much more reserved. But people that feel that strongly about something, that are that passionate, are going to get like that. They're going to push out their emotions, and so I really honestly look at Alex as a latter-day prophet in ways. I'm not saying he's a prophet and he's made prophecies that have come true. I don't mean that, but has that spirit of Christ, about the spirit of truth, the perfect law of liberty, and that is the foundation that he seeks all the time. I believe that. I believe that about Alex. I do. So, despite our little, apparent inability to get along for whatever reason, I would not put him down. And the same thing with there's another group that I have a lot of respect for that I mention all the time. And I've said this before, and when I put out that Trump needs to get back to being aggressively enforcing the First, Second, and Fourth Amendments, which I'm not alone on. Very good people have said the same thing, that that's the key to this. But they wrote to me and they said, all rubbish. They said everything I said about the First, Second, and Fourth Amendments and Trump needing to aggressively support those was rubbish. Yet I will still give them credence and credit for all of the good work they do. I don't have thin skin there. I'm looking at the end game here. And the end game is, okay, they don't agree with that's an issue, First, Second, and Fourth Amendments. Well, they certainly will if they get shut down by Facebook and by YouTube, right? Then they'll say, oops, right? Or Trump doesn't get elected in 2020 because of the warfare against him on these censorships that are going on. All right, everybody, thanks for coming. I appreciate you being here, and this is the timing for my presentations are going to be kind of uncertain. I think I mentioned that last week because of some schedule changes that are going on. I'm not sure how this is all going to work out on any kind of regular basis. So far, it's been okay, but I'm not certain it'll stay that way. So just be aware of that, and keep your eyes on the horizon, your ears to the ground. Keep your situational awareness on high. Remember, the Dems, the leftist Democrats, the leftist Marxists, they're marshaling their forces now, and this thing could explode at any time. Just keep your wits about you. Have a plan. Don't ever go anywhere without looking at your avenues of escape. Just keep your wits about you. Keep your eyes on the people. You'll know if your guts will tell you if there's a problem. Your instincts. All right. Just a word to the wise. Prep, pray, stay out of the way if you can. If you want to go to the border, there's a problem with that. Unity of command is a problem, and some of you won't know what I'm talking about, but the right people in charge, who you submit to in your organizations, all this, be very careful. I would prefer that President Trump do something with Article 2, Section 2, and do it in a formal manner so that you're protected. But just be aware that that's a catch-22. We need to do it, but they will use it against us. The feds will use it against you. So just be careful. Thanks for everything. God bless you. God bless yours. God bless the Constitutional Republic of the United States of America and the Second American Revolution. And may God bless President Donald Trump and all of his righteous endeavors, and send him the spirit of discernment that will come down upon him as the dews from heaven, that he may know the right from the wrong and be able to choose and have the courage to choose the right, correct thing. All right, everybody. Till next time, thanks for coming.